Hey, this is Heather, and you're joining Best Minds in Association, which is a CSAE, Colorado Society of Association podcast. And today we have a great guest, Keith Renninson with Renninson Enterprises, who will be our opening keynote speaker and breakout session speaker for the CSAE 2022 annual conference. It's taking place June 22nd through June 24th in Vail at the Hythe. Keith, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Heather. This is a great way to be able to promote events.
Yeah, it is. And it's just learning, right? Because I know when I'm cleaning my house, I'm constantly listening to something, and whether it's an audiobook or a podcast, sometimes it's music, but mostly I try to grow my brain while I'm doing tasks that I don't maybe want to do. Thank you for joining us and sharing your knowledge. Your event, your keynote will be how to stand strong during uncertain times and still take a trip, which is trademarked. It's your thing for a lifetime. Can you tell us a little bit more about that keynote session?
Sure. TRIP is an acronym that came from a time that I was lost in the Himalayas and wrote a book about that adventure. And TRIP stands for tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose. I kind of like to start talking with people about how we live in a world of words, and we've known that all our lives, ever since we were wee little kids, that words were going to be the things that we were going to live by and live for. And those words have changed, and words have become more meaningful, more impactful, more thoughtful, more mindful, and other words have fallen away. Some that we needed to get rid of, and some that we didn't. Some that have come on the scene are ones I'd like to get rid of, but we haven't yet. So what I'm going to cover with my keynote is how being lost in the Himalayas for a number of days honed my skills at these 4 character traits. And those 4 character traits are things that we were all born with. We just have to discover them and find them, enhance them, and grow them. And that's what I want to try and help your audience do.
So why were you in the Himalayas and how did you get lost?
I had hit a midlife and a mid-career crisis all at the same time. I would not wish that on anyone. And when that happened, I had been to Nepal once before with a girlfriend 3 years earlier. And I thought, okay, I really liked being there. It was a lot like the Colorado mountains that are here in Colorado that I've enjoyed all of my life because I'm a Colorado native. And I thought, I want to go back. I need to clear my head. I need to find where my passion lies again. I hadn't discovered my 4 words yet. I just knew that I was a man who had kind of walked himself into a corner and I needed to find my way out. And you can't always, as the old saying goes, see the forest for the trees. And that's really what happened. I traveled rather precariously for a number of days to get the end of a bus route at a small, dusty stagecoach stop by the name of Cavalli. And at Cavalli, I stayed for a day or two to kind of get my bearings because I knew I was going to start my trek at that point. This is in 1995, and I was carrying 65 pounds on my back, and most of it was photographic equipment.
Oh, wow.
And I had landed in Kathmandu to a heavy rainstorm, and it had been snowing in the high altitude areas for over a week, and Mount Everest had close to 6 feet of snow and many, many avalanches. And my original trekking permit allowed me to go to base camp at Everest. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to climb the mountain. And I couldn't do it. They revoked my permit. So I had to redesign my trek on the fly. So I knew nothing about the area I was going into. One of the travel guides over there helped me pick this area, go to a mountain by the name of Kanchenjunga in the northeastern corner of Nepal. I said, okay, sounds good. Let's lay it out. And so I get to Cavalli at the end of that bus ride. Have you seen these YouTube videos where buses meet on really narrow, high roads that have thousands of feet drop off? That's what these bus rides were like when I say that. I finally found out why their buses are all painted wild colors. It's because they scrape as they pass one another. It's so tight that they actually have to take the mirrors off sometimes, and they scrape. And so when they get to the next rest stop, they actually paint the bus again.
Oh, wow.
And so they carry buckets of paint and they're out there painting.
Interesting.
But anyway, So I'm at the end of my bus ride in Cavalli. I get my backpack, which weighed 65 pounds, in, had one case of Cliff Bars in it, and a lot of photographic equipment. And I start taking off on the trail, which everybody at this little hotel at the end of the road told me, that's where you go. That's where you start. That'll take you to Kanchenjunga.
Now, did you have clothes too? And like, outside of and how long was the trip originally supposed to be?
About 5 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
I was really lost in my head. I needed a lot of time.
How many Cliff Bars are in a case?
24.
That's not enough for 5-6 weeks.
Well, when I had to design the trip on the fly, I had no idea what was going to be the services to the tourists or to the public. And the fellow told me, he says, I know you'll have services up to Cavalli, but I don't know what you're going to have after that. And I said, okay, well, I was running out of time. I had to get going because there was a timetable to all of this to be able to get back to Kathmandu in time and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, so I just took off, which was my attitude back in those days. That's kind of what caused my problem, was I was a fly by the seat of the pants kind of guy. And here I was a certified financial planner. So, I could plan other people's lives really well, but I did a poor job of planning my own oftentimes. And this trip was sort of indicative of that. But as I was taking off, within 4 hours, I was lost. And I had hit a Y in the road and the trail that I was on, and I could go right, I could go left. I'd pull out the map and the compass that I had with me, and I'd start looking, well, which way do I go? I finally devised a system that I would always try and go in the direction I was going, but go up, because I knew that I was always going to be gaining altitude. And at the end of those 4 hours, I had multiple blisters on both feet because I was in high altitude boots. That's all I had brought with me. And I was in a world of hurt in many respects. And I sat down by the side of the trail, and I started to, I needed to gather myself in a little bit, because there's a little bit of panic hits when you kind of have that happen in a foreign country.
Yeah.
And I pulled my journal out and I started writing my thoughts down. And I did that then through the whole rest of being lost and through the rest of the trip, which set me up for journaling for the rest of my life. But that particular journal turned into my book, and which was wonderful. So over the next number of days, I bounced around with people at different homes that would take me in and feed me when I would run across someone. They didn't speak English most of the time. They didn't understand what I was trying to accomplish or where I was trying to get to. So it's quite a story, and I hope your audience will enjoy it.
Yeah. So this is prior to Google Translate, where we just be like, we'll say this in whatever language.
Yeah. 1995, we didn't have much of the way of technology at all with this respect. No.
Barely had websites.
It's true. That's so true. Yeah.
Okay. So were there signs? Like, I just have so many questions about how you got lost because I know in Colorado we have like markers, right? There's like signs showing you which way to go. Were there not markers, or were they in another language, or were they different than what you were used to? Like, how did that happen?
Back in the Himalayas, the trails are streets and highways, but the people that live there know where they go. And so, no, there's no little arrow like in the old TV show MASH that points to Detroit or to New York City. No, there was nothing that pointed in the direction that I needed to go. I was trying to get to my very first town, which was called Toplajun. I love the names of the Nepalese towns. Toplajun was supposed to be a place where I could spend the night, get my act together, and then push on from there to Kanchenjunga. But I don't want to spoil the rest of the story, so people are just going to have to come hear about it.
Sure. And then buy you a drink at CSAE conference and just like really pick your brain about the entire story.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Now, how did the assessment how did that come out of this trip and getting lost? Like, where were you like, oh, well, here's where I could really do something with this knowledge.
A really good friend of mine by the name of Tamara Gandor, who might be a name that you've heard before. She's in the National Speakers Association with me, had put together her assessment a number of years earlier. And so her name came to mind when I was sitting at home. I'm a bachelor, divorced. I have a 28-year-old son, and I live alone. And I'm sitting home on a Saturday night with the height of entertainment, watching Sven Gulli out of Chicago with black and white 1940s horror movies. This is one of my favorite things to do on a Saturday night.
Oh.
Because I love watching the old Boris Karloff movies and stuff like that. They're just such a kick. I've got a real passion for old movies, black and whites especially. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, we're in the midst of COVID. I'm not selling my talk. I'm not getting any events. Of course, nobody was. There was no events to go to.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, how can I really make it attractive? How can I make it something that people could really sink their teeth into? And so I got out a really good bottle of Merlot. Isn't that what everybody does when you hit a wall like that?
Absolutely.
So I went and got a bottle of Merlot, poured myself a nice glass, sitting there, and I started scrolling through the internet while watching this old movie. And was about halfway through the second glass that I had started to compile a lot of notes. So I went and I've got a gigantic whiteboard. It's 4 foot by 5 foot. And I put it on an easel in my dining room. And I put a circle in the middle, which I drew into 4 quadrants for trip. Because at that point I've got the trip down. It just doesn't have this component to it yet. Mm-hmm. And each component then, tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose, I started writing all of the things that were strong or weak about each word. And pretty soon it started to come together. And I'm going, wow, this has got a lot of meat on the bone here. Maybe if I called Tamara, she can help me put an assessment together. So in answer to your question, Heather, it takes a bottle and a half of Merlot, a gigantic whiteboard.
A bottle and a half. Oh, wow.
I meant to say a glass and a half.
Oh, I was like, wow, I'd be out dreaming of these things.
Definitely, me too. And you combine that with the creativity of the old black and white movies, and suddenly it all kind of came together. Oh. And I texted her and I said, do you think I've got something here or not? And she wrote back, we've got to talk. You absolutely do. So what came of the assessment, it took us 3.5 months to develop it.
Wow.
This was not a quick, easy process. And what took the longest was writing the questions. Mm-hmm. Learning how to write the questions so that you got the kind of feedback you needed with the answers to find out if people were strong or weak in each of the 4 character traits. So we sat for many hours in a coffee shop designing what the assessment would do and how it would be laid out and what it would accomplish for people, and then laid out a series of emails that they would get afterwards, giving them suggestions and ideas of how to make themselves stronger in each character trait if they scored in a weaker fashion. Some people score beautifully across the ball. They're the type A personality. They're clear at the top of their game right now. They're going to be great at all 4 character traits, but they might actually be a little weak in one and it surprises them. That's when I can come in handy, because I can then help train people to be able to get those character traits stronger. Did I answer your question?
You did. Now, with the assessment, I know I've taken other assessments. Some other assessments say that, it's okay to be weak in these other things. So what's important? Why do you and this assessment feel it's important to strengthen all areas versus maybe playing on your strengths?
Well, personality assessments are different than a character trait assessment. And I don't know that there are that many character trait assessments out there. Not like mine, at least.
That's good distinction. Great distinction.
Because character traits can be strengthened. They can be learned. They can be taught. They can be absorbed. Personality traits, you're talking psychology now, where things are a whole different ball of wax than what this is. And I think that that's the difference. Are you familiar with Angela Duckworth of the book Grit?
No.
I will talk about her in my keynote. Angela went to the U.S. Military Academy in Annapolis because they were having a 50% attrition rate of losing soldiers in the first week, what they call Hell Week. And so she developed her own assessment, but she developed it around perseverance and passion. And I think she misses the boat, because those two kind of are along the lines of purpose and tenacity, but she left out imagination and resilience. It's the full package of those 4 things that are character traits that make us all strong and passionate in our lives. But we could be really strong at tenacity and be weak at imagination. And that happens in a lot of businesses. That's why a lot of CEOs and people at the top have wonderful people that they surround themselves with. Because if they're poor at imagination, they hire somebody that's great at imagination. But wouldn't it be wonderful if you could improve that character trait on your own and grow it up so that you had it at a level that you really wanted it. And that's what I hope to accomplish.
Okay. Okay.
And
That's
let
it.
me add
I
one
like
more
the
thing.
distinction.
Let me add one more thing for you.
Mhm.
We talked about this in the pre-show. This is a great tool for employers, is they're looking for how they can use the assessment with current employees or with new hires. They'll find out up front whether a new hire has everything they want or not. We score the assessment as passive, active, and super active.
Mm.
And super active is strong. Active is okay, you're using your skills once in a while, but not a lot. And passive is something that you kind of push it to the side. You don't really think about it very much, and yet you should. And I think that this is where employers and employees could kind of work together. If you were going to hire a staff member and you put them through the assessment and you suddenly discovered that they were a little weak on purpose, well, that's mission statement territory, isn't it? That's the place where you want to be able to draw them in and say, all right, here's the mission of my business. Here's what I want to accomplish. And I want you to be fully on board with this mission. This should become your purpose while you're here working for me. That's the kind of thing I want to be able to help people accomplish. And I think then employees become people who stay longer. We've got a bunch of job hoppers going on in this country right now, where people are just jumping from one job to the other for benefits, for money, for anything but for loyalty. We need to get loyalty back into our vocabulary. And I think that that's where employers could take advantage of it.
While we want loyalty in employees, but this isn't going to solve all your problems if you are not a business that's being loyal to your employees either. So like just because you're taking this assessment doesn't mean you're going to be like retaining. You also have to look into your own business, right? So just
definitely, it has to be both sides of the fence.
Okay. And now will this help now employers also be able to learn how to be that for their employees?
I think so, because any time that you look internal, anytime, it's like utilizing meditation, which is something we'll talk about in the keynote, is that anytime you use meditation, you go internal, you suddenly slow your thoughts down to where you start to see things a whole lot more clearly than you did before. Why are the employees not staying? What is causing their loyalty to wane? What am I doing on my side of the court that is not enticing them to be loyal to me? So yes, it opens that door for self-examination, which is what I got a whole batch of it lost in Nepal. I got to self-examine everything. And I found a lot of stuff about myself I didn't like. And I found out things I wanted to improve upon. And when I got home, I made some definite changes, and it helped a lot.
Nice. Okay. Now, why is this assessment so important?
Well, I think that it will give people a leg up on something maybe they've not looked at before. During COVID, resilience was a huge topic because we had all been struck down with lockdowns and restaurant closures and business closures. We didn't know what to do with that. It was a whole new ballgame that we were all shocked by, with the inability to carry on our lives in the fashion that we had been accustomed to. And I think that suddenly resilience became a huge topic. And I started doing calls and talking to groups just about resilience, even though I wanted to talk about all of TRIP, and I was able to fashion it around that. But resilience was one of those things that, wait a minute, we got to learn how to be resilient. Our parents didn't really teach us that. The generations that followed the Great Generation didn't always teach those character traits to their children, mainly because we had a prosperous society for so long that we didn't have to teach them those things because they had nothing to be resilient about. Well, we all know that life is tough no matter when you live it or how you live it. And you've got to be resilient during your life in many, many aspects. And I think that that's what will make people really start to see the value in this, is that they suddenly will look at how, am I really tenacious? Do I have that grit? Do I have that drive to push through and make things happen and make adjustments along the way? Do I have the imagination that I need to be able to actually think things through and see different ideas and different ways to do things? And lastly, do I have the glue, the purpose that holds it all together, that mission statement? Are my employees going to latch onto that glue and like it just like I do? There's no guarantee, but we've got to be able to work together to be able to make that happen. And I think that's what makes both the assessment and the keynote work well together.
Nice. Is there anything else about your assessment that you want to share with us without giving too much away? Because it's important that you attend the CSAE annual conference, right? It's very important for that, because you're going to get one-on-one, face-to-face not one-on-one, but face-to-face small group interaction with you and learning more about this. And so the in-depth pieces. So what is it that people need to know for people that can't make it, but without obviously giving too much away?
Well, let's come at this from just a little bit of a different angle.
Okay.
In working with you and Sue, developing everything for this convention, I requested of you 4 volunteers.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And I want to be able to have everyday folk that will come up on the stage one at a time with each letter. I will interview them beforehand. We will settle in on a story that we're going to have them share. Then we will talk about it in a kind of an interview fashion on the stage for about 5 or 6 minutes. And those 4 people are going to get a chance to share what they learned both from the assessment that they didn't know about themselves and that they wish they had known during COVID maybe. Mm-hmm. But also what they learned during COVID when we got struck down hard and we were all at the bottom trying to look up and figure out where to go next. What did they do? And how did they do it? What did they implement? What did they try that failed spectacularly? What did they do that succeeded spectacularly? Everybody needs to hear from their peers. They don't always just need to hear from a talking head like me. They need to hear from somebody that they sit next to at these conventions or at your monthly meetings, and they can say, I remember you were on stage, you talked about how you did this, this, and this, and how it really worked. Tell me how you pulled all that together. That's the kind of thing I want to be able to make come out of these 4 interviews. Then they can say, all right, I can see where the assessment now actually helps me be stronger in that area that you were already strong in. You already have that ability. I don't. I really want to learn how to do that. And I think that that's where it'll tie the 2 together. So in that regard, we're looking for 4 volunteers that will join us. I'll have 1 on stage with me during tenacity, 1 on during resilience, et cetera, et cetera. And then Sue and I were talking this morning that we may have a little quick panel at the end where we might have all 4 of them quickly jump back up on stage, and we'll share maybe some insight that they've gained from the keynote and from other people's experiences just to end the day on.
Sure. And if you want to, if you're planning on going to the CSAE conference, email Sue at Hawk, HAWK at CSAE.org. And I'll put that in the show notes just so you're not like driving your car and like, where I got to find a pin. We'll have that for you. 4 volunteers that are going to attend the CSAE meeting. And
this is all free, by the way. You're going to get the assessment for free. There's going to be a code that you'll be able to put there. You'll see that's in the marketing materials. You can go take the assessment for no charge. And I would just sometime in the next 3 weeks, so after you receive that stuff, just go take it. It only takes 6 minutes. It's a fast test. Okay. There's 32 questions. And I think that people will find a few of the questions intriguing. Mm-hmm. You'll read it and you go, whoa, I hadn't thought of that before. I hope that happens for people. I'm already hearing that it does from other people that have already taken it, mm-hmm. where I have 2 people that I actually put their testimonials on my website. One got her bachelor's in psychology, and the other lady was in sales. And the woman in sales said, I have probably taken every personality assessment that's on the face of the planet. You asked questions that made me stop and think. And that's what I liked about it. So I hope that will happen, and so people will have a little aha moments, and then we'll talk about it at the keynote.
So do you want people to think about the questions or gut instinct?
Rephrase that.
So when people are taking the assessment, do you want them to say like, and this is, I don't know, I've not taken an assessment, but I'm going to, is your favorite color blue or green? Do you want them to immediately answer or be like, oh, I don't know, blue or green. I really like when, grass is green and sky, whatever, trying to decide, like should it be thought inducing or gut reaction?
Yeah, thought provoking for sure.
Okay.
There aren't any softball questions like what's your favorite color?
Sure. But I like it.
and mine's going to be purple, as you're going to see. My PowerPoint is totally purple. But it's so regal, right? It's such a gorgeous color.
It is.
So I think that people will react to the questions, just as you read it, what you feel with that question. If it gives you a bit of an aha moment, sit and think about it. There's no time limit on taking the test. I say it only takes 6 minutes, but if you want to take 15 minutes, that's cool.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you at CSAE's annual conference. And again, that's in Vail, June 22nd through the 24th. You're our opening keynote, as well as a breakout session speaker. Man, I can't wait.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. All right, until next time.